Welcome to the Chinese University 50th Anniversary Distinguished Lecture Series. I was told that if I repeat anything that you should have already known, I'll get a low rating. So Professor Herbert Marsh is one of the most popular student evaluation of teaching instrument in the world. He has published a lot of reviews on student evaluation of teaching.
Here's just a little bit about who I am. I publish a lot. My research is highly cited. I'm pretty good at winning grants. I'm on the Australian and British Academies of Social Sciences, and I have joint appointments at 3 different universities, and at UWS, where in Australia in particular, I've had lots of different titles. So today I'm going to talk about student evaluations of teaching, and certainly this is one of my major substantive areas. So my research, more than 50 articles, and there's literally thousands of published articles in this area that I've reviewed. The factor analysis support for my SEEK instrument is very strong. More than 30 published factor analysis of SEEK responses have identified the factors that SEEK is designed to measure. So how well does the SEEK factor structure generalize across different disciplines? The factor analysis for the total sample and each of the 21 subsamples all identify the same 9 SEEK factors. The SEEK factor structure is very robust. Well, here's a very important aspect of it, of student evaluations. What's the relative importance of the teacher versus the course? Can you use student evaluations to evaluate the course rather than the teacher? Similar results were found for the overall course rating. So even when we asked students to evaluate the course, really what they were evaluating was the teacher. Primarily reflect the teacher who is doing the teaching, not the course that's being taught. This has very important implications for their use. They are good for evaluating teachers, but apparently not very good for evaluating courses. For most teachers, there was no systematic increase or decrease in the ratings over the 13 years. Teachers don't get better with more experience. The bad news is these people were getting the student evaluation, so they didn't get any better. The good news maybe is that most other studies show that they declined, so at least they stayed consistent over the 13 years. Mostly, if you don't have systematic intervention, teachers don't get better, they don't get worse. There was a classic study done by John Sintra from Educational Testing Service. He found in his research that ratings by observers tended to be more reliable, but he also said that it took 20 or more observer reports to get minimal ratings. So don't use peer ratings to evaluate teaching instruction unless you're going to have 20 peers go in at different times during the course to sit there. Now, peers can be useful. Peers are probably quite useful in terms of evaluating how up-to-date the reading list is and the content and things like that, but they're not particularly good for evaluating teaching or effectiveness. Time on research is positively related to research productivity, was not related to teaching effectiveness, and negatively related to time on teaching. So there was some negative relationship. Time on teaching, however, is not related to teaching effectiveness, and this is incredibly damning. So the more time people spend preparing for teaching doesn't change their teaching effectiveness. Now, I think what's happening here is that if you don't know how to be an effective teacher, then spending more time on it isn't going to do much good. Time spent on teaching was negatively related to research productivity and negatively related to time on teaching. And any of you who do survey kind of work, there's always a halo effect. So if you ask people if they're good at any 2 things, there's some people that say they're kind of good at everything and some people that say they're kind of bad at everything. So even for the self-ratings, there was almost a 0 correlation. We argued that universities need to set as a mission goal the improvement of the nexus between teaching and research. The existence of this synergy is a prerequisite rationale for having a research university. If there is not this synergy, then why have a research university? It's probably more effective or more economic to do teaching in teaching-only institutions where there's no research. It's probably more efficient to do research in research institutes where there's no teaching. Let me return to my original set of conclusions. Student evaluations based on the teacher as the unit of analysis are multidimensional, reliable and stable, valid, relatively unbiased, and seem to be useful by all the major stakeholders. The PREQ, Postgraduate Research Evaluation Questionnaire, probably you only have one PhD student evaluating a year, never more than a couple. And so if you get bad ratings, you know who it was. And that PhD student is dependent upon you for at least the next 10 years for letters of reference and so forth. So the anonymity is probably much more important than classroom ratings. The PREQ responses were unlikely to be useful for any of the purposes which they were designed, including benchmarking and improving universities. Now, logically, CEQ, National Student Survey, and PREQ, it doesn't make any sense. If you want to compare different universities, it makes no sense to ask a student who's only attended one university. Because even if that university was quite good or not so good, that student wouldn't have a frame of reference that included other universities. So it's hardly surprising that the results don't accomplish what they want to accomplish. There's no basis for using CEQ type ratings or approaches instead of student evaluations of individual teachers or vice versa. They have different purposes. However, there's limited rigorous evidence of CEQ type responses that they're reliable, valid, or useful for any purposes. The substantial set literature in support of their reliability, validity, and usefulness should not be used to justify CEQ type ratings. CEQ ratings should only be used with extreme caution, and certainly they should be qualified by estimates of probable error. Thank you.